Hey, hello, I'm Ren Ribeiro, and I want to connect with you about peace and justice. We are interviewing women who labor for peace, as we have forever and always will, until we all feel peace in our homes, our workplaces, our communities, and especially our bodies and minds. This initiative is named Mujeres Co-Labor for Peace. It's a show of intimate conversations with justice workers who are healing their self and communities from the effects of misogyny, capitalism, and climate change. Welcome to the show. Mujeres Co-Labor for Peace, or the abbreviated MC4P, is a show of intimate conversations about healing the effects of misogyny, capitalism, and climate change. Today's episode is the first in a series on healing the effects of capitalism. My name is Ren Ribeiro, and I wish you complete wellness and lasting peace. The idea here is to arrive to this moment at the start of each episode with a simple reflection that we seldom make, asking ourselves, how is my beating heart right now? Asking myself this, my heart feels a little jumpy. It's present for sure. And happy. How is your heart? I invite us all to take a slow, deep breath of appreciation. The intimate conversation today is about healing from the effects of capitalism. As I mentioned in the series on misogyny, in order to heal from something, you need to be able to name the thing that has caused pain. To name the thing, you need to understand the thing. So to begin this episode, this series, I'd like to share elements of my journey to arrive at a personal understanding of capitalism, and then crack open the door to the pain points. Capitalism is way more than economics, way more than business, even way more than money. So it may take a number of episodes before we get into these and more aspects of capitalism. Saving $2 a week from my childhood paper route and working as a cashier and waitress were formative experiences with money. I only stumbled into business school because I was running away from all-male engineering courses. And my first business was more like doing something cool and exhilarating with a highly competent friend than launching the typical startup. It wasn't until a few years after I'd landed in the finance sector that aspects of a less conceptual, more personally invested understanding about capitalism started to click together. Simply by virtue of my positionality, perhaps literally sitting at a big mahogany desk in an office with windows, had something to do with it, but largely through this shiny new professional management class I was now part of. People I served would regularly share with me very intimate details of their lives, unsolicited. I believe the details clients shared with me was a comfort level connected to the personal nature of money. Since I already knew their finances, why not share more of their lives with me? It was clear that people of high net wealth and people of very volatile means equally felt they could trust their bankers and received a personal satisfaction beyond the mere financial transaction. At my final and favorite bank of the 6 I worked for, the extent of the finance sector's responsibility to society landed in me. If I couldn't lend startup capital to a restaurateur or other small business entrepreneur, it could completely redirect the trajectory of a life or a family or a community. This might seem entirely obvious, but with this important heart discovery, I began to observe numerous people's relationships with and emotionality around money. And I became more able to see and hear and feel the voices of those screaming that capitalism and the moneyed class has some accounting to do. And I didn't know where to begin with that level of accounting. Reckoning with the emotions we all have about money in our lives allows us to tune up the voices calling for fair and equal access to funds, for fair distribution of grants and other opportunities. What are the messages we consciously or subconsciously hold in our minds and hearts about money, about equity and access, about how much is enough? Through whom and through which of our experiences have the stories we hold about money and about capitalism emerged? Whose stories about money do we most resonate with, and why? These are the sorts of questions that can help us identify pain points about capitalism. In 2009, after the nauseating, too-big-to-fail banking crisis and the troubled asset relief program bailout, I left banking to serve the planet in whatever way I could. I'd already had one foot out the door due to a sense of complicity in helping extremely wealthy people fully insure their deposits with state and federal insurance corporations and not helping enough people who really needed capital. I didn't like this feeling that had washed over me. I had initially felt like I was infiltrating the banking sector in order to be the change. Years prior, I had attended a number of community planning meetings about the formation of the Business Alliance of Local Living Economies, now called Common Future, which warned of the ugly implications of economic globalization. We now see the impacts in the losses of many of our locally owned retailers, unfathomable wealth inequality, and the gross imbalance of socio-political power. From the Public Banking Institute, I recently learned that the world gross domestic product is $150 trillion, but the potential world derivatives, the claims that can be made on that $150 trillion, are over $1,000 trillion, or a quadrillion. I learned a while ago that it would take about a month to count to 1 million, and that it would take 100 years to simply count to 1 billion. A quadrillion is mind-blowing. After hopping over to an international bank that soon imploded, I got local-ish again, with a bank managed independently in a 7-bank conglomerate that had led the nation in socially responsible banking in the late 1980s. This bank got consumed in 2009. I saw the writing on the wall early on, along the lines of disaster capitalism that Naomi Klein explains in her very important book, The Shock Doctrine, that a hungry, opportunistic megabank was coming to loot one of the good guys. Want to know how I could tell? Filling out expense reports. It went from being simple and straightforward to making my brain cramp. And I'd already been through 3 mergers and acquisitions. Naomi Klein is one of my all-time favorite mujeres co-laboring for peace. She and her husband are an amazing team doing high-level activism or actionism for socio-political rebalancing. Her first book, No Logo, emerged right as Seattle erupted in protest of the World Trade Organization's corporate complicity. A 20-year look-back article in The Guardian describes her book as mixing eye-opening reportage with sharp-tongued analysis of consumer capitalism, a Bible for understanding the world and the motor behind a new kind of grassroots politics. In very clear black and white, she named the problem of capitalism and the ways corporations shape our lives and culture and use their ever-increasing sophistication to engage our emotions without our consent. This lack of consent thing is a big pain point for me. I'm halfway through her newest book about the mirror world of far-right sophistication, digital platforms, and the toll of capitalism on humanity, called Doppelganger. I'll return to more of Naomi Klein in another episode in this series. 2 other influential authors I'd like to mention are Marjorie Kelley and Ellen Brown. I will forever be grateful to Marjorie Kelley, who woke me up to worker ownership and cooperatives with her book, Owning Our Future. We had a lovely conversation about it at a Slow Money conference years ago. She has also written Wealth Supremacy: How the Extractive Economy and the Biased Rules of Capitalism Drive Today's Crises, and The Making of a Democratic Economy, Building Prosperity for the Many, Not Just the Few. Here's a cool word cloud from her blog post, 50 by 50, about reaching 50 million worker owners by 2050. I would so love to see that. Ellen Brown inspires with her lifelong labors for economic transparency, the Public Banking Institute she founded in 2011, and her Web of Debt blog with crystal clear messages about the need for and success of publicly owned banks. Here is the latest world map of publicly owned banks. The only one in the United States is in North Dakota, and it was established in 1919. California is getting really close. And there has been a bill put forward to establish a public bank in Massachusetts since 2017. Let's hope 2024 is the year this bill passes. From a New York Times article, Ellen Brown says, "We actually need publicly owned banks for a capitalist market economy to run properly. Banking, money, and credit are not market goods, but are economic infrastructure, just as roads and bridges are physical infrastructure. By providing inexpensive, accessible financing to the free enterprise sector of the economy, public banks make commerce more vital and stable. Public banking is not a radical idea, but has been practiced in the U.S. with excellent results for decades and around the world for centuries. Sharing the works of these rock star women, naming and spotlighting, if not yet healing, the effects of capitalism, inspires me, and I hope it also inspires you. By knowing or reminding ourselves of great things others do, we fortify our capacity to be in the midst of challenging times without shutting down. It's good medicine for our hearts. The last thing I'll share about my time in the banking world for now is the fact that until I had the dynamic experience of organizing a standing room only socially responsible investment summit with 11 other folks in adjacent spaces of finance, I did not fully know or appreciate what it was to collaborate, to co-labor. And the more curious I become about the subtle interpersonal dynamics of collaborating, of organizing and movement making, the more I'm able to see how everything and everyone is interrelated at the micro and the macro level. The individual heart and the collective heart. There are a number of micro and macro level intersecting movements demanding change. The humans leading them study history at the roots of economic injustice and begin the process of collaboratively feeling out a way around capitalism and taking steps to get through and perhaps beyond it. Examples include unionizing, worker-owned cooperatives, time trades, and other alternative exchanges, gift economies, donut economics, slow money and impact investing, and I'd like to add in here the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature. And gross national happiness still matters a lot. As we take the extractive squeeze off people and procedures, we begin to halt the extractive squeeze on Mother Nature. Remember how fast she rebounded when we were quarantined in 2020? She can do it again if we stop the extractive squeeze of capitalism in our minds, our families, and our communities, however we are able. My hope is that you grow inspired to think with a few other folks in your life that you may want to discuss this subject with afterwards, maybe watch the show together and share experiences. And it would be great if your takeaway was a fuller understanding of a few pain points of capitalism, like wealth inequality, access to capital, and globalization. This episode of Mujeres Co-Labor for Peace explored aspects of one person's story about understanding capitalism and the emergence of a few of capitalism's pain points. It posed a few provocative questions to help each of us to reflect on our personal feeling about capitalism, and also referenced works by Naomi Klein, Marjorie Kelley, and Ellen Brown. Brilliant women whose labors continue to help us individually and nationally to heal the effects of capitalism. Join me for more of the capitalism conversation next time as we hear from a few women laboring for economic justice on Mujeres Co-Labor for Peace. I am Ren Ribeiro, and I thank you for joining. This initiative is supported by Inner Fortune, the full-life self-coaching journal that is now digital. Join us for peace, and thank you for your heart.